We're back. We're so back. Thank God GSL's back. Trigger versus NightMare coming up, everybody. PvP for us here.
Yeah, first PvP this season.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, Maru moves on. Although I got to say, it was in a pretty epic fashion. Those were some great games from him.
Yeah, he looked so on point. You know, the rumor mill has just been spinning about his injuries and what condition he's going to be in. But seeing his performance there against Rogue and also against Trigger, if you didn't tell me that he was injured, I wouldn't be able to tell from those games. Like, that was just classic Maru. His engagements were so good, his game sense was on point. So I really think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Obviously the favorite in Group B to go on to the round of 8, and he did it in very convincing fashion. But now we have the two players who lost their initial series, both of them 2-0. Maru 2-0 Trigger in his GSL debut. NightMare lost 2-0 to Rogue in his earlier match, and one of them is going to be eliminated.
Yeah. Let's see what happens, man. Trigger in his very first GSL, fighting for survival. NightMare, like everybody else here at this point in time, a veteran. Old school at this point in time for GSL, but I think this should be a pretty even match. I think it should be a real back and forth. We're going to ley lines here for map number 1. Let's see who survives and goes on to face Rogue. Okay, top right is Trigger, bottom left is NightMare. Finally going into a mirror matchup today here with this PvP.
Yeah, I'm really curious how this one's going to shape up. So for me, during the offseason, from EWC all the way to the circuit starting up again with GSL and all these other events, you know, being revitalized here in StarCraft 2, I've mostly been focused on the way the ability of energy recharge on the Nexus has been changing matchups like PvT in PvZ. I'm a little bit more uncertain about the implications of it here in PvP at the super top level.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Sure with some support here from the fans.
Nice.
Hoping he can make it all the way to EWC. Trying to get Protoss their energy.
I know.
Love it.
Sorry, guys. All the pros say they're too strong, so there's no
Even
stopping.
Trigger in his interview was like, yeah, Protoss is a little bit too strong.
I can't wait for next season when a Protoss doesn't win this GSL, and they keep saying this. This is going to...
Yeah, it'll never go
world
away.
I'm living in.
But I am curious if we're going to have like Sentry openings coming in. Like I'm thinking back to stats in previous GSL seasons when he would open like Sentry Stalker Expand. And it seemed so rock solid, especially on good expansion maps like Golden Aura.
Right.
Back in those previous GSLs. And I just remember being so excited about how strong the defense looked because people tried to bust him. And then they stopped because they're like, well, this isn't really working.
Right.
But now with energy recharge, a little bit more of that rock, paper, scissors game in PvP can be removed because as soon as that sentry pops, you can charge it up with the Nexus, you get an extra 100 energy, and you can send a Hallucination Scout immediately across the map. We see Trigger right now going for that Sentry Stalker, and the Phoenix gets across map about the same time that you would want to throw down your Nexus. It's not like it gets there before to check the expansion, you know, before you would build down your own expansion. So there's a little bit of a wiggle room where you still need to react to what your opponent is doing, but a lot of the fog of war of PvP in that regard has been diminished. And so having Trigger for the expansion like this here with a Sentry, interestingly, I think he actually didn't recharge. I have been so surprised in these last 2 days of GSL how little it's been utilized, this energy recharge ability. I think maybe me personally, I'm biased because I've been having so much fun playing with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's one of these things, like, sometimes, I've seen this with other patches before, where, you know, programmers go, oh, well, now, like, the Hellions, we can't even use it anymore because they changed it. And then I come to the studio and I'm like, it's literally here just as much as it was before. You never know. You never know what's going to happen when these patches come.
Great shield battery can get thrown down. That will stop these Adepts. Both players go for the expansion. Phoenix now coming in here for a Trigger. Of course, the energy recharge is not free. It effectively costs you a chrono boost, which is effectively costing you a probe,
right,
to do that kind of scout in the early game. So it does make sense to be a little bit more greedy here as Trigger, especially if you've done your prep. You have a better idea of what your opponent NightMare is doing, and he does spot the Twilight Council there in the main base. Trigger's going for the Twilight Council of his own, and you know, relatively standard start here. No shenanigans early game.
No, I mean, it looks like they're both going to get their expos up. Sometimes PvP can be a game where like one guy expands and either holds a rush or gets smashed in the process.
That's actually finishing there, and then Trigger with Warpin.
Yeah, that was
blocking them
nice.
out, and now coming in here with 3 Stalkers and 2 Sentries. He did not let up on the production out of those 2 gateways at all, and he's actually catching NightMare a little bit off guard. Force field there at the bottom of the ramp, going to zone out those units, and Trigger just going to retreat. He killed, I think, at least one of those Adepts. This one on 15 HP might even get caught by the retreating Stalkers.
He's going to try to intercept this. In fact, it's probably going to be smarter for NightMare to go like sort of an unusual way.
Yeah, that's lovely
across
there
the
for
map.
Trigger.
Yeah, nicely done. Both blinks are roughly timed out. Looks like NightMare has a little bit of a lead. Sometimes if you're just a little bit ahead in a blink and you can start to win a fight, that one extra blink you have before theirs finishes can win you the game.
Yeah, but also 400 resources lost advantage there for Trigger over NightMare because of those early skirmishes. That goes a long way, especially in a mirror matchup when you're going for effectively mirrored compositions. A lot of time in PvP, if you want to play more of a macro style, you will just stay on 2-gate Twilight Council and 1 Robo. And you don't really ramp up the gateway production until you get your 3rd base up because you're constantly producing Stalkers out of those 2 gateways. It's how we have 10 units on the board right now for Trigger. It's how we have, what, 8, 9 units here for NightMare. Is they're just not missing production cycles. But interestingly, actually, I think it's Trigger that's throwing down 2 additional gateways before that 3rd base. As NightMare is maneuvering across the map with this Phoenix, he can blink on top. Blink is done here for NightMare, but decides better of it. He's going to play nice and safely, and in fact, add an additional gas and add in an Immortal here. Huh. I'm a little surprised how timid they are about taking this 3rd expansion, Tasteless.
Yeah, you know, let's see if this works. It does feel a little bit quick, right? And when you see a Warp Prism coming in here for Trigger, I mean, it does feel like he's going to lay up for a big attack, right? So let's see if, in fact, NightMare can hold this. Now, if you're making a Warp Prism, you're not making an Immortal. So we have a 2nd Immortal coming out here. Trigger's going to expand just a little bit later, actually.
Delay expansion, 4 gateways in total. He's been on point with his production cycles, so there's a ton of Stalkers on the map right now here for Trigger. 15 in total, 4 Stalker advantage over his opponent.
Trigger's on the move here. Now, he's going to have a little bit of a bigger army because he got his 3rd Nexus later. I don't even know if he knows about the 3rd base. He might just be trying to come out here towards the natural.
A lot of force fields here in the bag. If he can section off those Immortals, and indeed he does, he can take a favorable exchange here. More damage being dealt right now by Trigger Stalkers as opposed to NightMares. But it's a tough position to break into, kind of similar to the way that Rogue had a hard time pushing into the natural expansion of Maru. Trigger's having a hard time fighting through this choke between the natural and the 3rd. It's a NightMare. And I think Trigger recognizes that and is like, okay, well, I can't get too much done. Let's throw down a Forge. Let's get charged. Let's transition into the next stage. Whereas NightMare kind of doing something different. He is not going into upgrades. He's throwing down 6 additional gateways and now building a Warp Prism. I think he wants to turn the table a little bit here on Trigger and become the aggressor.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to come down here now. He's sharking around the map for the time being.
The
is there an
extra
observer with this? I don't think there is, actually. Yeah, so he can't snipe that. Zealot charge on the way. Gonna have a bit of a fight over here.
Warp Prism, a little bit vulnerable, but instead going for the Stalkers is NightMare.
Oh, NightMare's looking pretty strong. Is he gonna just blink right at him? Yeah, he can start to do that with some of these. That's always a scary thing, man. When you start taking a lead with those Stalkers, you can really kind of close in, sink your teeth into that.
A lot of energy left on these sentries too. I think 3 or 4 force fields at least. And this is a good angle to come in with force fields as well, with that battery especially not being done just yet.
Looks like he snipes that observer. Warp Prism here for NightMare is going to come in. He's unloading some Stalkers. He'll be warping in shortly after that. Oh, he's actually juggling. Okay, he's just making sure the weaker Stalkers can get away and be safe. You know, the problem is that this Nexus is like part of the block. Blink on the left side there by Trigger. Now Zealot's coming in and trying to absorb the impact there from the Stalkers. Probes also getting pulled. So a lot of NightMare's units attacking these units without bonus damage. They're attacking Probes, they're attacking Zealots, but still, those Immortals doing a ton of work. Trigger losing quite a few workers right now, but is he going to hold on, Tasteless? Charge 9 seconds away from completion. He's blinking forward. He's blocking the retreat. Trigger looking good, man. He's going to chase him away. That was a really strong attack there. I actually almost thought it was going to be an overextension. Yeah. When he went for the Warp Prism, I'm like, oh, that can't be right. And then it actually worked. And so now we're going to have that tech finish. Trigger's going to be warping in plenty, and I think his counterpunch may be devastating. It could even take this third base out.
Yeah, that was looking so good there for NightMare with that massive concave on the left side with a force field that he had on the sentries. But Trigger just with some beautiful pro pulls. The Zealot warp and absorbed a ton of damage. Now he's on the aggro. Looking here on the left side, Zealot charging in. A lot of Zealots here for NightMare as well, but keep in mind, he does not yet have charge. Trigger, +1 about to finish. The Immortal trying to focus fire down these weakened Stalkers on the right side. Battery about out of energy too. Trigger doing an excellent job of keeping these Zealots alive, and now it's NightMare with a pro pull.
The Immortal's still doing a lot of work back there. Is he going to try to dive in on this? He does one-shot it. 16 probes have already been wiped. Zealots are warping in. The force fields are very punishing. I don't know, man. I think we may be at the very end of this game. The Zealots can just keep chasing these Stalkers, giving free shots for Trigger Stalkers up here now. 91 supply to 63. And no end in sight. Oh my God, the Immortal comes in here.
Yeah. Usually when robo units are rallied across map, it's in bad situations. But that Immortal just decked 2 Stalkers, and Trigger with his first GSL victory.
Nice.
Takes the map here against NightMare.
A fresh face in GSL, performing well, taking out NightMare. We saw him kind of... that was funny.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with the composure of Trigger, by the way. So many players have come onto the GSL stage, even like veterans, and almost get in their own head. I know, like Rainer, like world champion, one of the best players in the world. He talked about how in his interview too, in his first couple of seasons in GSL, he would get in his own head. But
I think it's because a lot of people discover competitive StarCraft through this tournament, and so it kind of becomes weird when they're finally in it. You know, we've had a ton of great players around the world. Not that many have actually played in GSL outside. Outside of Korea, all the good Korean players have played this, but. Yeah, I think a lot of people, because this show started basically like during the beta of StarCraft 2, right? Or maybe like right after. I actually can't remember quite when the thing happened, but it was like we were doing this right out of the gate. I think a lot of people, they look at it, it feels a little bit weird, right? It's, yeah, so, but Trigger, clearly not the case. Trigger is just, this is just another day. He looked really good. Really good decision-making in that attack. We're going to go into game 2, guys. Let's do this. Okay, Trigger in the top right, NightMare in the bottom left.
So one of the things about Trigger that I think might be surprising some of these Korean opponents who haven't played against him too much, like NightMare, is that this guy's got really good control. Trigger, one of his favorite things to do when training for StarCraft 2 is play these like UMS maps that just focus on micro, where you have, say, 7 or 8 Stalkers against an AI that is super good at Blink.
Yeah.
And he will just basically run drills with his Blink Stalkers, microing as best he can.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best players in the world at doing this. And I feel like that was really showcased in the previous game, where NightMare, attacking that third base, had this massive concave on the left side. The Warp Prism, it didn't seem like it was in a position that was vulnerable, but Trigger is just so solid with these scrappy fights at knowing how to mess up the AI of his opponents attacking units, like those Stalkers targeting the Zealots and the Probes instead of his own Stalkers, therefore mitigating the bonus damage. And then also positioning so well. Like knowing that he can blink on the left side. We thought it was an overextension, but Trigger's like, you know what, this is just enough.
Yeah.
I will be able to cover this with the Zealots and the Probes on the top. I will be able to win it out. And I feel like in terms of Trigger's gameplay, from my perspective, from the games that I have seen from him, that is what he does best. That is his greatest strength. And that shines, I feel like, more so in PvP than basically any other matchup, because it is so based on these gateway unit armies, especially Blink Stalkers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point here. Both going to depth, by the way. I was kind of waiting for these gateways to finish to see what was going to be made. Now, it looks like we're going to have a quick span down here for NightMare. Pylon on the low ground, kind of a nod to taking that base over there.
Yeah, very typical to throw that third pylon down.
Yeah. And, I mean, we'll see where the deviation is, but right now they're just literally mirroring each other. It feels like a lot of the ZVZs early on we cast. So the Adepts are going to be out on the move here for Trigger. He's going to throw his Nexus down. We're waiting for that Nexus to come down here for NightMare. Now, there are weird things you can do, like put the third pylon down there and just, you know, it kind of implies an expansion and then do something weird and cheesy, but that's not happening this time around. His Nexus is just a little bit later.
Yeah, I think the difference was NightMare queued up those 2 Stalkers and then started the Nexus, whereas... Oh, no! No battery.
God.
Okay, that's a lot of probes going
This is
down.
like probably the worst thing that can happen early game PvP is 2 Adepts getting your base. 2 Adepts can one-shot probes. So, like, you just get a lot of kills. And it doesn't really cost that much. There's not a lot of Oh, my God!
Wait a second. What is happening? How is this also...
I totally missed that on the minimap, and then when they
God.
went back, I'm like, oh my God, it's
I was like,
happening
what a
here, too.
disaster for
They
Trigger.
both messed up, and he's going to get back in.
Yeah.
Now he cancels.
Oh, that's so funny. Because I'm imagining, from NightMare's perspective, he sends the 2 Adepts into the main base, and he's like, ha ha, I got you.
Yeah.
And then he hears, like, the attack warning happening back
it is
at home.
maybe like that may be like actually the worst feeling in StarCraft is when you're like, I'm winning, I'm God tier, and then you go back, you're like, all my workers are gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like basically even now. But
right, yeah.
Yeah, losing 4 or 5 probes like that in the early game with 2 Stalkers is a disaster. 1 more Adept isn't going to get into the main base. This is not nearly the threat that 2 Adepts is, because it obviously cannot one-shot these probes, but...
Yeah, but I mean, you're
nice
going to get
move.
probably, what, 2
That's
kills?
worth
I thought
it.
he might get 3, but the force field is pretty good. So they're both going for Blink. So maybe Trigger's like a % ahead or something. He's 31 workers to 27. Actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
good.
Yeah, he had the faster Nexus, and he got, I think, maybe 1 more probe in total than his opponent.
Yeah.
So. I'm still so amused by that. It's one of the funniest early game PvP interactions I've had in a while. Well, army composition's effectively mirrored. We got 6 Stalkers for both players. I think it's NightMare that has 1 more Sentry than his opponent. But besides that, Macro looking about the same, Blink timing effectively the same. Trigger just with a very slight edge here, but absolutely anyone's game. And I'm almost a little bit surprised here that NightMare is moving across the map. He does have force fields here, so we can section off these Stalkers on the left side. But again, Trigger,
Dude,
he's no slouch. Wow, look at
Great
that,
micro
actually.
by
Those
NightMare. That was
force
really
fields.
good, man. Damn.
Wow.
That was so perfect.
Man, I was skeptical, but he did such a good job of isolating those 2 units.
Yeah.
And he even pulled back his injured Stalker. I wonder if this can snowball, because he's sending more units across the map. Now Trigger going to try and push forward. Nice force field of his own, really messing up the concave here of his opponent. Able to pick off that Sentry. Doesn't quite get the retreating Stalker, but a little bit of tit for tat. He's going to feel better after losing those 2 Stalkers effectively for free earlier on. At least he got some more damage when NightMare poked in again, but...
So, I mean, things quiet down a little bit. We've got the Robo Bay coming up here. You know what I feel like I actually don't get to cast a lot of? Is really long StarCraft 2 PvPs.
It doesn't happen much anymore.
I'll watch other tournaments or other streams, and it's like, they happen, man. They don't happen when I cast them. I feel like I've almost never had, like, you know, let's say 5 bases, 6 bases on each side. It just... Something in the universe is stopping that from happening when I cast, but maybe this will be the one.
I think it's just a very snowbally matchup.
I think you're
especially
right.
with Blink Stalker versus Blink Stalker, because you can just pounce on the opponent's army if you get that advantage. It usually swings one way or the other quite quickly.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Same thing with StarCraft 1. It's very hard. You just don't see a lot of late game PvPs. It's like somebody wins in a pretty pronounced fashion before it's like, you know, we're at the crazy parts of the game. All right, nice blinking here from Trigger. A little force field coming down here to punish any overextensions, although I don't know if we have an overextension just yet.
Nah, just messing up the concave a little bit for NightMare. Like 2 or 3 of his Stalkers, because of those force fields, are constantly out of the fight. So even though there aren't really units falling on both sides, the damage being dealt, the hit point damage being done by Trigger is just a little bit greater than NightMare. I mean, these are the small kind of interactions that, in a mirror matchup PvP, where you're basically both just making Blink Stalkers in the early game, as you secure the 3rd and eventually work your way up to Charge, up to more Immortals, potentially even into Archons later on. It's all about these little tiny finesse movements. It's a very technical matchup in that regard. And in terms of development, it's even more mirrored than it was in game number 1. The 4 gateways coming in at effectively the same time, looking at charge in and +1 weapons. I feel like Trigger just a touch ahead, might have a couple of a second window if he's able to keep pace with the chrono boosts. but effectively mirrored. Worker count also effectively mirrored. It really is anybody's game.
Okay, big warp in here. Seems like NightMare's eyeing the 4th base. So he's going to be moving down there. Right now, Trigger's getting his warp prism, and Zealot charge is going to be finished. So I would not be surprised if there's going to be an attack inbound here. There's also a warp prism out here for NightMare.
Yeah, they have.
And this is really where you can start to roam around the map too, because now you can instantly warp in on the fly.
I think either of them would be very hard-pressed to actually make an attack happen unless they catch their opponent out of position. Hold that thought, actually, as NightMare's going to pounce on this. Oh, he blinks forward. He gets the Warp Prism. Okay, NightMare, he's got the Zealots there on the right side. Focus Fire coming in from Trigger is a little bit better on the Stalkers, but the Zealot count here for NightMare is very high. That Meat Shield is so strong here on the front line. More Zealots being warped in there from Trigger. But the Stalker count here for NightMare being as low as it was, the fact that Trigger was able to get that edge in the early game fight means that Trigger could Focus Fire down NightMare's units so much more effectively than NightMare can. And it's already starting to snowball. The initial engagement looked so much better for NightMare there, but just the Stalker count reigning supreme here for Trigger. He has so much more flexibility with how he can micro his army, and now he's laying pressure here to the 4th base.
Yeah, I mean, Trigger's looking pretty good. These 2 Archons are going to be a really nice addition. They're going to melt those Zealots as they come in. And I think Trigger, he's just trying to tee up a nice attack. He doesn't want to get sloppy.
I think this is really smart from Trigger, too. He's just waiting until that Warp Prism comes back. He's like, you know what? I won that fight. I have my edge.
Yeah.
How do I lose this game? Potentially overextending.
Right.
Let's not do that.
So
let's wait until we have the Warp Prism, and let's go in again.
All right, now's the time. You can see NightMare's going to pull back here, maybe get better pairings against the Zealots with the Archons, but it's not enough. More warp ins. The probes are pulled, but maybe a little bit too late. The Archon's still in the front, doing a ton of damage. More Zealots to warp in to sponge up that extra damage.
I mean, the Archons there from NightMare did work with a shield battery, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, Tasteless. I think Trigger's going to win this one 2-0 and go on to the final match of Group B. In his GSL debut, Trigger's going to take his very first series here. Wow, what an excellent PvP. Trigger versus Rogue coming up.
I didn't think Trigger was going to be that decisive in his victory against NightMare. That's really impressive. Trigger showing a lot of promise.
PvP is his matchup, man. He is so smart in these scrappy fights.
Yeah.
He just finds edges in ways that, they kind of remind me of another Canadian product from a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
You have these fights with basically mirrored armies. It's like, wait, somehow you're just better. He has this intuitive understanding of how these units interact, how to get the most value, and I love to see it, because if Nerves had gotten to Trigger, maybe he doesn't win those fights, but he has just been so calm, so collected. It's exciting to see him win his first series. When we come back after this break, Rogue versus Trigger in the final match of Group B. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.